Welcome to this episode of Project Success Stories. I'm Raul Encinas. I'm joined by Scott Freeborn of Point B. Scott, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I understand you've got a really complex type of project and there's a lot of stuff going on. Why don't you give us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so my client, they had an antiquated ERP system and a CRM solution that was not integrated. They did an RFP, a standard RFP process, wrote down the requirements, sent it out, got a response, got a system integrator, they selected a system integrator, and then they did something smart, and they also hired me as to be the project
That was
leader.
smart.
And why this was different, why this I think was a good thing is because the system integrator was very focused on the requirements and getting them to understand what the solution did.
Oh, especially probably the technical stuff, right?
The technical side, setting up what the solution, changing configurations so that they could kind of meet their needs.
Well, so in that situation where you've got multiple clients, multiple vendors, multiple parties, multiple stakeholders, how do you even walk into that situation as a project leader?
For me, I always start at the process. I always try to understand what are they currently doing, what is that they're doing well, and where do they want to be. So where is their future state? What's their ideal state? And then work on what are the gaps. What's between their current state and their future state? Where are those gaps?
So you're doing all this, there's conversations, and then everything just worked out magically, right?
No, it did not actually, no. So what my client bought was a solution that they thought could do everything, the magic silver bullet like most ERP solutions are. Unfortunately, they found out that one of the key things that they needed was for billing. They do subscription billing, and the software that they bought was one invoice, one order. Similar like Amazon, you buy something, you pay for it. They have orders coming in, and they need to bill the customers at the end of the month. The solution did not provide for that, and as a result, there was panic. The client was very unhappy. They were pointing fingers at the system integrator. There was a lot of tension, and so I took control of the situation and locked them in a conference room, gave them a little bit of water, a lot of candy, and we really focused on what is their current process, and how can we get there with the gaps, with this, and let them lead and find out what made sense based on what the benefits they wanted versus the trade-off. So we were able to muddle through it and get them to come to a happy state for that.
I want to hear more about that because I know just sugar alone is not the key to breakthroughs. Yeah. So what were you doing to convince everyone that getting together in the room and that was the right thing to do?
Well, I think it was part of the trust that they were starting to see because we had done this for the CRM solution. They had saw that if we go forward on this, they can see what it's going to look like as opposed to just focusing on the requirements and not being able to touch it. So this allowed them to put it on a whiteboard and see how it would play out for them and what their options would be. So it was a lot of just facilitating so that they could come to the realization and understand the trade-offs of the solution.
Now, why was that important for you to have them come to their own answers?
So that they could own it. So because they are the owners, they need to own the process, they need to own the solution, and in the end, they're the ones that are gonna take the solution forward. So it's important for them to be the owners.
Oh, that's great to hear. So as we've got people in the audience who are maybe facing the same kind of challenges and struggles, what would be your advice to someone in the same situation?
Don't start with the requirements. Start with the process and let the process drive the requirements. And then focus on the change piece. How is the organization going to be impacted by these new systems and solutions? Everyone goes through change differently, and so you have to understand that and work with them to make sure that they can go through that change cycle of awareness and adoption.
What are some of the changes that you went through in the course of that project?
For me, it was I probably should have spent more time with the system integrator up front and understanding their methodology and getting them to understand the importance of focusing on process first as opposed to focusing on the requirements. To me, that was the big highlight on takeaway of what I should have done.
And so as you look at now the next engagement that you might have for one of your clients, how will you do that? How will you start to build trust in your next client engagement?
That's a good question. So I think right off the bat, understanding, and I do this with all my engagements, is understanding the objectives. Where are they trying to get to? What are their goals? How do you measure those goals? And then building out a structure to support that. Be the processes, making sure that the solution will support that through that ecosystem.
I hear obviously process is very important and it's one of the things that you're passionate about, but I also can see that the relationship matters to you, the way in which you're interacting with people. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I think that's the key to any successful engagement is developing those relationships, and not just in a business sense, also understanding like personal, where do they have kids? What do they like to do outside? Because if you can create that connections, then people are going to do more for you. They're gonna put out their all to make sure that they're successful.
Well, let's put you right in the hot seat and say, tell us a little bit about you, something that most people wouldn't know.
Most people wouldn't know. I'm a music fanatic. I've been to probably 400 different concerts over my life, and so anything from the Grateful Dead to Metallica.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, next time you lock people in a conference room, maybe you can bring in some Metallica and see how that works for you. I'm interested in your take in what's coming down the pike.
So what I think is interesting is since the recession, I think companies have kind of really started to hit their groove, and they're maturing more. And where we used to see a lot of companies ask us to just do project leadership, and now we're seeing them, hey, can you also look at, let's do a process improvement event. Can we apply lean principles and do a Kaizen event? We had an instance where we had 60 people. We got them together and we helped them improve their order to cash process. And it was an amazing experience for them because it really was transformational. They went from kind of where they were at in this box to where they could be. And it really highlighted for the senior leadership what they could potentially be doing. For me, it's also just coupling more change management. Organizations are starting to have change management organizations like they have PMOs, which I think is needed because there's so much change going on in these organizations. Companies need to be able to react to those and have their employees and stakeholders and customers understand how they're going to be impacted by those changes.
That's great, Scott. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. It was great being here.
Scott Freeborn, Senior Associate at Point B, has been our guest today on Project Success Stories. I'm Raul Encinas, signing out.